Hello guys! Welcome to the 8th part of the SASS and Advanced CSS course. Today we are going to create the image gallery with the CSS Grid. But let me first explain you this concept that stays behind CSS Grid. So I've created a quick code pen to explain you everything, and as you can see I'm using a Firefox browser because it got the best support for CSS Grid. You can see here on the div element that I created with the class grid that I can see each of grid elements and highlight them and also see the exact row and column of the grid. So let me explain you how does it work. Here I specified to display this whole element as a grid, and when we are displaying something as a grid we need to specify how many rows and how many columns we want to have on our grid. So we can use the property grid template rows, and inside of it I used the function repeat 3 times with one fraction. So what does it mean? One fraction is a new type of dimension that has been introduced with CSS Grid, and it means that the whole container is, for example, has width 1000, we divided it by 4, so one fraction will be 250 pixels. And the same that was written here, can we write like this? So 1fr, 1fr and 1fr. It is basically the same, but also we can use the repeat function to don't multiply the code the same, so we can specify here 3 times 1fr and we've got the same result. So our grid is divided with three different rows, as you can see right here. We've also got the property grid template columns, which mean that we want to have our grid displayed with 4 columns, also with 1fr. If you want, you can specify pixels here. So let's say, for example, that we want it a little bit bigger, it got 1000 pixels, so let's specify that we want 4 times 300 pixels, and it grows a little bit. It ignores the width property because we specified that we want 4 times 300 pixel. And here you can see that we've got every row marked starting with 1 and also 1, 2, 3, 4 and so on. The next thing that you can see is the grid gap, is the gap between each of our grid element, each of our block here. And also we can set it to a value. I've chosen here 10 pixel. So let's maybe now do something more interesting. Let's say, for example, that we want in our grid this element to take the width of this. So this element grow to a 2 element. So we can take this div right here and create here a class to select it. So maybe selected will be a good name. And here inside of this class we can use a grid column property to set on which column we want to display this element. And let's, for example, say that we want this element to cover also this one. So we can select the second column, as you can see here on the grid that I'm displaying, that we want to start with the second column and take this one. So we can say 2/4. So starting with second column until the 4th one, we want this element to take these columns. But we can also set it a little bit another way. We can here set that this element will start with the second column and will span 2 more columns, and we've got the same result. Let's have a little bit more fun with it. Let's, for example, say that we want to have this element overlapping these 4. So it will be a huge block containing 4 divs that we have already created. So it's the second one. We'll start with this one. Let's add here a class, maybe block will be appropriate because it will contain 4 elements, so it will be huge. And here we can set the grid column to second, as you can see, of course, on our grid to second and until the 4th one, so second, and will span 2. And as you can see, we've got that, and we want to have this row set to starting with the first one until the 3rd one, so the grid row will be set 1 and span 2. And as you can see, we've got this huge element here, but the selected with the class selected disappeared. What's wrong with it? And as you can see, we've got here only 9 elements, but we have specified in the HTML that we want to have 12. So the other 3 needs to be thrown away because it doesn't contain inside of the grid. There is no place for them. But we can fix it. We can here force to show it with the grid row property set. Setting it will 100% make this element visible. And we want to have it between the 3rd and the 4th row, so 3rd/4th, and now as you can see, it is back. So after this quick introduction, we can start to develop our image gallery. So as you can see here is the final version of the image gallery that we will create. And here we've got our grid container, and the images will be our grid elements. And more of it, when you hover over them, you can see the nice looking effect. The image is turning into gray, and also the check label appears. I'm so excited to show you how we are going to make it. Let's get started. The first thing that we can do is to create here another section with class products, and inside of it we'll have a div with class products container with 2 low dashes. And for now it's everything. We'll put here our images inside this div, but let's now add a new SASS file called products.scss and import it as always in our main SCSS file products. And we've got everything set up. So here we can call the products class and specify the width and the height of the container. So the width will be 100%. We want to have the all available width, and the height will be set to, for example, 50 rem. And maybe let's now add a background color for something that we can see, and let's determine if the background is looking good. And as you can see, this width of this element will be appropriate. Maybe later we'll add some margin to it to divide it from the other sections. So let's quickly do this. Maybe set margin to 10 rem from the top and the bottom, and 0 from the left and right side margin. And also we want to display it as a flex and justify it to the center. So basically the element inside of it, the products container, will be centered in our entire section. So we can now style it a little bit. So add the container class, and let's set the width to 75% of the available width and the height to 100%. And let's maybe add another color to it, maybe black for now, and see what we've got. So as you can see, we've got our element here in the right place. It is nicely divided from the section above, so we can now create a grid of it. So let's use our display grid property that we learned in the introduction. And what we want to have? We want to have 6 rows and 12 columns. It will be a huge grid. So set the grid template rows to the function repeat and 6 times one fractional unit. So basically 6 times the same width. And also let's now set the grid template columns with the function repeat to 12 times 1 fr. Now it is good time to see how our grid will look like. So the first thing that we can do is to go into our index.html file, and inside this products container we can create 10 elements. Inside of it we'll put images later. So let's now use a little bit of advanced emmet. So let's add a div with class products product, and also second class products product, and the modifier specified to the index of the element. We can use the $sign to put here the index and multiply it by 10 and hit the tab button to see the magic. We've got 10 divs with our classes and our modifiers specified to the index. So now save this and go into our products SCSS file, and inside of it let's add to each of these div inside this container a background color and set it to goldenrod. I like this color. And also let's add a border set to 3 pixels solid steel blue and save this. So now you can see the 10 elements that we have created, and now we can focus on aligning them inside our grid. So thanks for watching and see you in the next part of this course.